Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? Aye, you'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? Assassin's Creed 2. Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast. Hello and welcome to VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, where we attempt to find the best game within a weirdly specific category. For example, this week we want to find the best game with balls that isn't a sports game. Now, I'm really looking forward to this one because we've got a lot of scope for creativity today, as in how do you define a ball? Does it have to be small and spherical? Do the planets in No Man's Sky count? Could you be abstract and talk about the infamous ball scene in Dragon Age Inquisition? I mean, the bit with all the dancing and the masks, not the bit with the Iron Bull. So, for the purposes of entertainment, I will accept any interpretation of the word ball, no matter how contorted or wrinkly. Speaking of which, I'm joined today by Editor-in-Chief Tom Murray.
No, refuse. I'm refusing.
Oh, Jesus.
I've been tittering about that all morning. Associate Editor Alex.
Hello.
And staff writer Connor, how you doing?
Hey, yeah, doing great, doing really good.
Fantastic, right? So like I said, we're looking for the best game with balls that isn't a sports game. I think I want to start with Connor this morning.
Okay, yeah.
What have you brought for us?
So my game that I've brought is Lethal League Blaze.
Okay.
It's a fantastic 2D one-on-one fighting game where instead of punching or hitting the other person, there is a ball. I think it's meant to be like a baseball in the middle of the screen, which you need to hit into the other player in order to deal damage, which sounds simple enough, right? But thanks to a variety of moves you're given, thanks to some really excellent like visual choices, like audio soundtrack stuff, it's a really well presented fighter with a nice twist, which is all about balls. You know, it's all about
This is going to be difficult to get through. I'm so sorry.
It's all about really just whacking balls into the other person as hard as you can.
Okay, so, and this is like, so we are maintaining that this is a fighting game and not a sports game,
I was
right?
going to say, this sounds like a futuristic sports game.
So it's kind of like a mix. So it's a fighting game because you both have health bars, you both have like super attacks. It's a lot about spacing. There's a great like rock, paper, scissors sort of system at its core where you can either hit the ball, you can grab the ball, and you can bunt the ball. So hitting the ball, obviously you hit it, it speeds up, making it harder to hit and like dodge. You can grab it, which stops its momentum, and you can throw it once you've grabbed it. Or you can bunt it, which kind of temporarily stops its momentum for like an easy, slow-moving hit, changes its direction. And bunting a ball is a great way of stopping fast-moving hits. Grabbing a ball once it's been bunted is a great way of, stopping that. And then if someone's grabbed the ball, you can just hit it out of their hands. And it's great. So it's all about bunting your balls, hitting your balls, and grabbing your balls. Yeah.
So it's not right. Okay. So it's not based on an existing sport. Well,
No.
I mean, it is as much
I
as
would
fighting
say
isn't.
Sports-ish. This is the thing. It's like it's not a real sport.
So you've come in like you're really on the wire here,
pushing it.
And in fairness, right? Like the developers do describe it as a fighting game.
Yeah.
However, to put it out there in the genre category on Steam, it is in both the fighting and sports genre category.
I would say
So we've got a very controversial.
It's like a hybrid. I would say that it's played at fighting game tournaments. I would say that it's 1v1 nature. I mean, like I said, to be fair, ping pong is 1v1 and that's a sport, I suppose.
Yeah.
Ping pong.
Table tennis? I'm sorry.
I mean, see, we are once again we're butting up against like convergence of many genres here, and this is going to happen.
Just to qualify him straight.
No. I'm not.
I thought we were being
I'm trying to be.
What happened?
I'm trying to be. No. Let's explore this a little bit, because like genre convergence has been a thing in video games, and everything's like basically everything's a fucking RPG now, right?
Yeah.
Like Counter-Strike, is that a sports game? But it is an esports game. So where do you draw the line, you know?
Games where you hit balls with bats.
I do have to say that what doesn't work in your favor, Connor, is the use of the term bunting, which is a baseball term, isn't it? So that's
it is.
like,
It is a baseball term. Yeah.
I'm not going to disqualify it outright just because not doing so will annoy Tom. But it does look decent. Is this a mobile game? I'm just looking at some screenshots of it now. It looks very Switch.
I think it's a PC Switch sort of like indie fighter. Yeah,
it's got a really nice art style. It looks a bit Jet Set Radio, but sort of very 2D.
Yeah. It does some really cool stuff in terms of like it's a really great game if you want to like generate some hype between you and your friends, because as I kind of touched on briefly earlier, the more you hit the ball, the more it gets passed around between the two players without one of the players actually getting hit. It gets faster and faster and faster and faster, and it gets to a point where you're starting to hit the ball and it's like bouncing between the walls of the stage, like in a blink of an eye. When you hit
it's a really good game.
When you hit it at that speed, I think it's like jet engine noises start playing, the screen starts shaking and stuff. And there's a little number counter, which I don't think actually means anything, but it's just like you see these massive numbers clock up as you're like desperately trying to dodge out of the way or kind of redirect this ball.
I mean, it's very much you could call it a fantasy sports game, not based on an existing sport.
Sounds like that's still got the sports game title.
I would say
it's a bit like Blitzball. It's a bit like if I'd picked Final Fantasy X because Blitzball's in it.
Yeah.
But Blitzball is a sport. It's just not a real thing. I don't know.
All right, I'll.
I think we know where this is going later, so just set the rhetoric out. Right?
You're
done.
It's a fantastic game.
I'm gonna allow it because I feel like it's a sporty fighting game and not a sports game in the sense of it's not like a baseball simulator, right? It's not FIFA. So
baseball's barely a sport, to be fair. So
well, exactly. It was fucking rounders, isn't it? So okay. So I've been looking forward to this because I don't know much about this game, Alex. I know of it by reputation, but I don't know.
You would absolutely fucking love this game. I can't believe that you have never played it. It is the most thinker game I could possibly imagine.
Oh, is that right? Because I look at it and think it looks a bit childish, actually. So I don't know what that's saying about me.
So when I when I read this, I obviously immediately, if I'm not talking about sports and I'm talking about balls, I'm talking about bollocks. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. I'm thinking about testicles. And the first thing that comes to mind when I think about testicles in a video game is Conker's Bad Fur Day, which is, so for the uninitiated, this is a rare-made Nintendo 64 platform adventure game in the vein of things like Super Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie. And Conker's Bad Fur Day actually began life as just another one of those games. In fact, Conker first appears in like Diddy Kong Racing as just a normal cutesy platformer character. And then I think people at Rare just realized, hang on, we're making loads of these games. Why don't we make something different? And around this time, it was around 99, 2000, right? So it was the time when South Park was getting quite big and all that sort of stuff. And King of the Hill and things like that. A lot of these things that look like a kid's show, but then are absolutely not. And so the mad thing is there's straight up video footage of when this game was called 12 Tales Conker 64, when it was a cutesy platformer.
Yeah.
And it's the same areas and stuff. And they just then later flipped it, retooled it and said, right, this is now an adult parody of those games. And so the story of the game is literally Conker is a scumbag and he's out at the pub and his other half is calling him and saying, when are you coming home? And he's saying, I'm having one more round, and then goes back and has like 10 more drinks. And he wakes up in a field and there's a talking scarecrow. And he has to he's trying to make his way home, but various things happen. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so that's the basic thing. And so it's all a parody of platform games, and it parodies various films, parodies like The Godfather, The Matrix, Saving Private Ryan, all sorts of stuff. But The specific thing I'm thinking of is there is a boss in the game, which is a giant boiler. So you go down into this area and there's two little like flaming guys, little dudes that are on fire, and they attack you, and you drink a load of booze and unzip your fly and pee on them in order to put them out. And then they jump into this boiler, this giant machine, to sort of fight you, and it's a boss. But the boiler is actually called the Big Bollocked Boiler.
Okay.
And the cutscene leading up to the start of the fight is just great because it's the little fiery guys arguing inside the boiler, and one of them's like, press that button, and he's like, the one with the, and he's like, yep, press it, and they press the button, and these giant balls come out of the bottom of this boiler between his legs. And then the way you defeat, and the boiler talks like someone doing a bad Brian Blessed impression, talking about how he's got balls of brass polished to the nth degree. The way you defeat the boss is you have to stun him first, and then when he's stunned, you run up to him and press B in front of his bollocks, and Conker gets two British red house bricks and smashes the balls with the red house bricks. Okay. And then at the end of the fight, the balls fly off, and they become a puzzle piece that you then use to reach the next area, where you push the balls around, push them onto things to wait, so the balls serve a purpose after the fact. So, but when I think of a
nice.
boss,
That's good.
When I think of balls in video games, it's not a sports game. I think of the Big Bollocked Boiler saying balls of brass polished to the nth degree, then smashing them with a house brick. In addition, the other thing is you can get 2 lots of balls for the price of 1 in Conker, because there's a second section of the game with where there's a mountain made out of poo, and it's inhabited by dung beetles, and in a great British joke that I adore, all the dung beetles are Liverpudlian because they're beetles, right? And they all speak in that accent. But yeah, there's a good section of the game where one of the puzzles is you're rolling balls of poo up Poo Mountain and pushing them into certain places in order to open doors and stuff like that. And as you push the poo, it's like a snowball in Mario or whatever, where it gets bigger because you're pushing it around, it's picking up more poo, and the dung beetles are helping you. So that's what I think of. I think of balls of poo and balls of brass. And Conker is, just in general, a lot of people talk about this because obviously Microsoft own Conker now, right? Because they bought Rare, and it's one of those IPs they own, and a lot of people say they should bring that back. But I actually don't think you could make that game anymore. Yeah. I think the state of parody has moved. It's like how there can't be another Austin Powers film now, and if there is, it would be terrible. But as a slice of that 90s time, and the way in which it skewers platform games, certain films, cutesy video games in general, is just excellent. It's like a technical marvel on the N64. It's all fully voice acted. It's beautiful looking. They did an Xbox a version which improved the graphics tremendously and stuff. And it's available, by the way, if anyone has heard this pitch and gone, I should play this. It's on both the original version is on Rare Replay on Xbox, current Xbox, and the Xbox remake is an Xbox original backwards compatible. But basically, I just think it's this it's one of those games that can never happen again. And to what you were saying at the start, Jim, about you've had a look at it, looks a bit childish. It totally is. It's childish start to finish. But it's just, there's so much, and it's so of its time. It's like they were just like, what's the big, we love the Matrix. They were like, we're just going to insert the Matrix lobby sequence into this cutesy platform, and you just have a section with slow-mo where you're jumping and shooting and all that stuff. For no reason other than they were just like, Matrix is cool.
It does sound very up my street, to be fair. I mean, like, because as an ad, I'm one of those like really kind of tedious people who goes on about how like bottom ages very well as you get older. Yeah. Like there's lots of layers to bottom. And I think
we should probably explain what that is to our US audience. Did bottom ever make it to the US?
Yeah, otherwise I'm just sitting here going, I love bottoms. So Bottom is a Rick Mail, Adrian Edmondson sitcom, and it's all slapstick violence comedy with poo jokes and fart jokes and the underlying the constant thread is that they're both constantly trying to get a shag and failing. Now that's the basis of it. Conker's Bad Fur Day sounds like a sort of cross between Banjo-Kazooie and the Viz. Is that essentially it?
That I would say is a fairly accurate description, yeah, and because it's really weird in some ways, because like there's a chapter called, this is the other weird thing about this game, it doesn't stick to one thing. So when you first play it, it's just a platform game, but then so they have a chapter called War, where Conker just accidentally gets drafted into a war between the squirrels and the teddies spelt IZ, as in they're Nazis. And you know, Conker even turns to the camera and says, "Teddies, I hate these guys." It's that sort of thing. But like when they have that chapter and they have a horrific shot for shot recreation of the Saving Private Ryan landing sequence where squirrels are getting shredded, and it's horrible, and it's genuinely awful. But if they're doing it with all these cutesy characters, but definitely you can see threads of it's also, this is the other thing, it's a game that could absolutely only have been made by British people. Absolutely. The tone of it, the attitude of it, and it is extremely puerile, and there's lots of poo, there's lots of balls, there's a bit that's set in like caveman times, and another one of the bosses is a giant caveman who's got, his weapon is a giant like dinosaur bone, and you're in a coliseum, you're in an arena, and his girlfriend you're doing so well in the arena, and his girlfriend keeps like jabbing him, saying he's got a bigger bone than you. Obviously, it's a Nintendo game, so they keep it all on that level of like.
It sounds like a Garth Ennis comic now as well.
And you that is another boss. I had not remembered that you're riding a little like velociraptor, and when that guy fights you, the aim is to bite him in the balls, and then when he's like grabbing his balls because he's hurt, you go around and bite him on the bum. So,
in summary, if you're going to laser focus on the interpretation of balls as bollocks, this game is the overkill.
I just remember as a kid, and it's like you said, it's layers, right? When I first played Conker, I remember begging for it, and it was one of those weird N64 games that for some reason was like £80.
Yeah.
And when this came out, it was an 18 rated game, and I was probably 11 or 12, and I was begging for it, and I was told I couldn't have it. And then grandparents come to the rescue naturally and buy it when mom's not looking. And at the time, I remember, same as South Park, just thinking it was hilarious because characters were drunk, and you know, there was wee and there was poo, and there were funny accents, and you know, all that sort of stuff. But then replaying it as an adult, as I have multiple times, you sort of see all the other layers of more adult humor, and appreciate it a little bit more. And so it's like, and it is, and like some of it you appreciate the bits that are actually like biting commentary on how crappy certain trends in games and movies are.
I love that, because as someone who does often try to sort of talk about bottom on an intellectual level and try to defend it on that sort of level, not that it needs any defense, but okay, all right, that does appeal to me. I probably should seek it out.
It's an annoyingly good choice, I think.
It's kind of hard to argue with it.
And also Connor, that's a game that isn't a sports game. As an example of something, in case you're struggling.
I mean, you're right. Yeah, I've just been totally bodied. It's the first podcast I've ever said I'm sitting here like, wow, I've just been absolutely shafted.
There's all these innuendos coming out, and I'm not sure if they're deliberate or if it's just the frame of mind I'm in at the moment. Tom, your choice when it came in, I looked at it for a second and thought there is only one way which this fits. So,
trying to think how I set this up. I've been ill this week, so I didn't do much research for this, to be fair. And I was like sitting there trying to come up with something, and my mind was cast to former VG247 deputy Kirk McKeon, good friend Kirk McKeon, and he, I think, I'm not sure if he discovered this, but he definitely did something about it, where he took some close-up photos in game of a horse, and the horse was from a famous Rockstar game, Red Dead Redemption 2. And so the horses, if you aren't aware, because Rockstar they go into detail, right? So they've got very authentic recreations of horse bollocks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's it, really. I mean, I haven't really got a massive story to go with it. It was the first thing, for some reason, the first thing I thought of while coming off a fever. So, I mean, Red Dead Redemption 2, probably, if we're talking in terms of best games, most well-received, I mean, Conker, definitely. But I think Red Dead probably is slightly higher in terms of critical acclaim, at least. And it's not a sports game. Factually, it's not a sports game. It's not even a futuristic sort of sports game. It's just a Western.
Very much like Conker's Bad Fur Day, Red Dead Redemption 2 is ostensibly, you could describe it as a British product. And there is at least a section of because like they've gone all in on this, right? So there's famously the horse balls in Red Dead Redemption 2 will expand or contract depending on the weather.
Yeah.
The horse is shit. Mm-hmm. So like all manner of bodily functions have been,
and the physics on the balls as well is. And
it's probably one of the few examples of a game that has ball physics rather than like jiggle physics, right?
Yeah, I think
in that sense you could probably make the argument. I mean, it would be a bad one, but you could make the argument that Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the most feminist video games in the AAA space.
I think the Saints Row games, right, had they were very proud of their penis and ball jiggle physics.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely one or two fighting games with some jiggling packages. Not that I've been checking, but yeah.
I wish I picked a different game, to be honest, because I feel like Alex covered this area, and I've like, could I pick something I don't know, Billy Hatcher, something really boring like that. I know
well,
like
it's
egg,
funny we had Katamari right the other week.
Yeah,
because that crossed my mind as well. If you were going for the more normal interpretation of balls, but really, Conker was the first thing that popped into my head.
I don't know what it says about us that two of us have picked these kind of balls. I don't think it's a good thing, is it?
I've got a theory.
Set it up quick. The state of mind I was in, defending myself somewhat. Alex was probably, this is just his usual thought process, but I was like during like fever. During this fever, as an example, I always have problems with time. Right, I can't understand time when I'm ill, and I have a high temperature. So I'm like, what is time? I must get to this time for the world to exist, or something weird. The other day, I was actually, in my mind, the world had stopped using the letter U. And because they don't stop using it, it ceased to exist. So U no longer existed. And the sound of it, the letter, just gone. And I couldn't process this in my brain. So that's just to set up how I was thinking during this whole process, then that might explain why I went to Red Dead 2's horse ball.
I think Red Dead 2 is a very good entry, though. And I've got a theory, right? I've got a theory that because with this podcast, everyone gets the topic, and then they think of an obvious one, and then they go, "But I don't want to go obvious. I want to go slightly off kilter." Right? So everyone in this topic probably got the brief and went, okay, right, well, FIFA's a ball game. I don't want to go FIFA because that's obviously a sport. What about Speedball 2? Still a sport. What about... And then everyone went to testicles, basically. But I think Connor did that. I think Connor did that as well. But then took things even further and worked himself into a shoot by coming back round to...
You're absolutely right. I pivoted off cock and balls. My first thought was there's a game called The Order, where it was. I remember reading headlines about how there was like a properly modeled like penis in that, and I was like, well, maybe I should go for that because that's funny. I can talk about ball sack in a AAA game, and that's quite good. There's an indie game where I think you literally play as a cartoon cock and balls, and you like try and attack each other.
Well, the genital jousting,
Genital jousting.
That's come
I
up,
thought genital
came up last week, didn't
jousting,
it?
but I thought, well, maybe that's a bit too low brow.
I will say, this is one of the
like-
few topics. This is one of the few topics where the first game I thought of is the one that I've put forward. One of the few.
I
It was
think
the
that's just
first
how you
thought
have
into
to
my
do
mind,
it,
which
yeah.
maybe says something about my thought process, because I immediately went to bollocks. I didn't even consider anything else.
I think it was the right move. for
Well, I
sure.
think, I think basically everyone will have ended up at bollocks, and I reckon Connor bounced off it even further and then ended up looping back around to kind of
sports.
into the sport area.
Connor can't escape the fighting games. It's like gravitational pull. Like he tries to break free, it always comes back to a fighting game.
No,
He
you're
was
right.
he was so trapped by that he couldn't process that actually it was basically describing a sport.
When this topic came up in my email, the first game I thought of was Ballad of Gay Tony because of that like 1 3-second shot of
Because it was a huge
cock and
deal.
balls.
It was a huge deal, wasn't it?
It was. It was a big like. Is this the first time we've seen a naked Willy in video games? And you know, and in a completely unsexual context as well. And we're back to the Rockstar connection there. Pioneers in this area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I've got to pick something now. Right. I love Connor. I love how you tried to break the mold and I think you tried to drag us in your own way away from the sophomoric inevitability of this topic. And I admire you for the effort, but it was never going to work.
Innuendo the whole time. The whole thing he's been saying slightly rude things.
You know, that's been good though. It's been, I appreciate it. Alex has gone insane with just gorging himself on
balls,
and shit and boners, and so I think maybe Conker's Bad Fur Day is too much in that direction, right? So I'm going to go with Tom this week. I'm going to go with Red Dead because it's nudging in the same direction as Conker's Bad Fur Day, but it's way more subtle, and I think
it's quite pure in a way, isn't it?
I think you can definitely look at that and say, well, you know, perhaps the people at Rockstar charitably, maybe they just really like horses and they wanted to do them justice.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
It's like one step above like a statue, right? It's that level of like it's not a crude it's not a crude play, is it? Like Conker, it's just going for authenticity.
Yeah, it's
it should be rewarded.
It's like the difference between Bottom and New Statesman, and it's
that's what I was thinking.
Pulling in a similar direction, but I think you know you can definitely pick one out as the more philosophical work. So Red Dead Redemption 2 is the best game with balls that isn't a sports game.
Thanks.
Don't sound too happy about it.
Really happy.
He's been absolutely raging for like, what is it now, 9 weeks that he hasn't been able to make any headway since the first episode, and he finally gets one in.
I thought Conker won it, to be honest.
I thought I was going to walk that one.
If I was you, Jim, I'd have picked Conker in that instance.
Are you criticising me for making the?
Yeah, I mean Conker had like
he's never happy.
The amount of balls he mentioned in his little speech. He went on for about 10 minutes.
He gave a
free
full
balls.
breakdown. He basically
3 balls for the price of
entire
one.
Yeah, but
6 balls technically.
I thought it was too. I just thought it was too much balls. I think you need. It's like it's too much of a good thing, you know. It's like Christmas comes once a year. If it happened more often than that, it'd be rubbish. The horse balls in Red Dead Redemption 2 nestled in amongst like quite a harrowing narrative game about a guy dying of tuberculosis and regretting the life choices he's made as a cruel debt collector, you know. And the horse bollocks are a nice little kind of oasis of mirth in amongst that. I keep doing this hand action, by the way. I'm so glad people at home can't see it. I just think the ratios are perfect. It's like it's a delicately constructed meal rather than a bollock sandwich.
Yeah.
Or the fucking salad that Connor turned up with.
I can respect that.
So, Red Dead Redemption 2 is the best game with balls that isn't a sports game. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps us get the word out. We're not just a podcast, of course. If you'd like to hear more from the team, then check out VG247.com for our fantastic news coverage, features, reviews, and game guides. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast.